Hello and welcome to Dungeoneered, a podcast dedicated to discussing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
Let's do this. All right, Josh, so for this week's Lukewarm Open, I don't actually have one. I forgot to do one.
After all your research for this week's episode?
All my research down the drain.
I guess we can't do an episode now. There's no open. How can we even begin?
Well, yeah, when you were like texting me on Discord and you were like, "Hey, are you ready?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I was like, "Oh wait, I have to do research for Lukewarm Open." And then I was like, "But I don't have one." So, I guess I'm still just going to sit here and wait until we start and not actually have a Lukewarm Open. So, that's what we're doing.
Okay.
So what's your topic for this week?
Okay. Last week you mentioned Lord of the Rings, and you mentioned some incredibly wrong statements, which I just want to let you know that statement that you have, that wording of that you have mentioned some incredibly wrong statements. I made sure to underline, bold, and italicize in my notes for this for this episode.
I made statements about Lord of the Rings last week
that were incredibly wrong. That they were boring.
What were they? I don't What? Wait.
That they were boring.
Oh, the books were boring.
Yeah, that was your statement.
Just straight facts.
You're wrong. You're very wrong. But we don't need to bring up those now, so I won't even mention it.
Yeah, because they're so boring.
Ugh. Now, this week we are going to create Elven history. And for the topic to dive into, I wanted to dive into the mystical elves of Tolkien. Now, I want to preface this by saying Tolkien is a masterclass in creating worlds and histories because he was a linguist.
Truth.
So he's a linguist, which means he studied language intently. Everything from why numbers are the way they are in that culture and how the cultural and historical events affected the language. So he developed each race incredibly thoroughly, thinking about those events and how they would inevitably affect the language. He is really good at this, and his stuff is incredibly interwoven, like things are in real life. And so it's hard to tell you about one part without explaining a lot of other stuff. But I'll try my best to summarize. And for those of you who know like a lot about this, I'm going to screw up so much. I'm trying to summarize and cutting things out, and I'm also going to mess up every single name in this whole thing, which there are a lot of names.
I literally know nothing about Lord of the Rings elves, like literally nothing. I just watched the movies and thought they were way better than the books, you know?
I came from a similar position as well, where I was like, I know they have a like incredible history, and I brushed on a lot of it, but it's been so long. It felt like I was jumping into it again. Like I was like trying to like, wait, what is this? I don't even remember learning about this before.
I also was thinking that all elven names end with L, but then I was like, that's not true because there's Legolas and Elrond. But I mean, he starts with L, you know. So, but you know, now I can't think of any elf name. Gladriel, haha, I win. Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in now.
Is that one too?
Oh my word.
Legolas Dell, that's one, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, now to understand elves, we must first understand the god of Middle-earth. They are called...
Wait, there's gods in Middle-earth?
Yes. They are called Eru Iluvatar.
Right, I knew that.
I heard it said that they are the only one with a power in this world to create life. And this actually creates a really cool like event that happens when someone else who wants to create life, but they can't because they don't have that power, and which I think are in our world that we've built, where we set up kind of, you have to have an evil and a good deity work together to create life. I think that could definitely, that type of event that happens in this world could actually happen in ours. Like it would be a really cool thing to have for our history. Now, I'll jump into that near the end of this topic though. Eru Iluvatar originally makes these creatures called Anur. They're like angels or demigods. They're not all powerful, but they're still incredibly powerful. One type of Anur is called Valars, and they are going to be important to this story. Early on, though, the Valar mostly leave Middle Earth for a place called Amen, where they create the realm of Valinor.
Is that like their heaven or whatever?
I think I think it becomes like the heaven to the elves. Now I'm not
Yeah, is that the
sure.
place where they like go into the sunset and sail off
I
into the
think
sun
so. I
forever and
think
ever
that's
and
where
ever?
it is. Yeah. And one of the things about this place is that only immortals can live there. I'm not 100% sure why, but they said that like you have to be immortal to survive there for some reason. I don't know. Now, I'm not sure of this second part, but it seems like certain creations were made before the world or during a world upheaval early on. And the god Iluvatar, after creating them, put them in a stasis until the world was ready for them, bringing about the first awakening of the elves. To start off elven history, the first to awaken were three pairs: Imen and Imna, Tata and Tati, Anel and wow,
Tata and Tati.
wow, Aaron, Anel and
Sorry.
Anelia. Now they were awoken on the Bay of Quevenen. I'll go with
Yes.
Quevenen.
Yeah. Yeah. That one. That one. Yeah.
And the first thing they took in were the stars and the sounds of the water. And those two things actually became very important to their culture based off of this. Then they headed into the forest together, and they quickly discovered six more pairs of elves.
Ooh, do they have names too?
No,
Oh,
they
so not
do,
like
but
TT and Tata?
I didn't think it was worth because this is gonna grow a lot. They woke them up, and Imin, the first to be awoken, claimed them as his. Next, they discovered 9 pairs, which Tata claimed as his, being second oldest. Now they were 36 elves, and they all continued to travel further into these woods to discover 12 more pairs of elves, which Anel now claimed as his, making their total numbers 60. And for many days they dwelt by the river. They ended up inventing poetry and music. They eventually
What the
set out.
heck? They just found a bunch of elves in the forest?
Well, no. So it's in the same way they were like this 3 pairs were in kind of like a stasis, asleep. They were awoken by the god, and then kind of just left to do what they want. They went
Oh, so
in.
a bunch of elves were all asleep. Gods
Yes.
woke up 3 pairs. They woke up the rest of the pairs.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. It's
And the
not
rest
just
of
they
the
found,
pairs
like,
were kind of
elves
through.
like turnips.
Yeah, and so no, yeah, they were kind of spread out throughout the forest, and so they found more. Eventually, after a amount of time, they decided to set out again. And Imin thought, since they found more and more elves, he would now choose last, hoping to increase his small tribe's numbers. First, they came across 18 pairs of elves who were watching the stars.
Oh, this is going to be a big rip. He's going to get like 4 pairs and it's going to be even smaller.
Tata and Anel waited, but Imin said he'd wait, so Tata added them to his tribe. These elves were tall and had dark hair, becoming the ancestors of a specific type of modern elf called the Noldor. This was when the elves began to develop language. Now that there were 36 of them, now that there were 96 of them, and they created new words. Continuing the journey, they discovered 24 pairs of elves who were singing without language. Again, Imin deferred to these, so Anel added them to his tribe. From this group came a group of elves called the Lindar, which are known for their singing.
And for their chocolate making.
The group was
Lindar
now
truffles.
the group was now 144 elves, and they dwelt together for a long time until they had all learned the language. Emin now decided he needed to seek more companions for his tribe, but the others were content and did not join him on this trip. Emin and Imna and the 12 others traveled looking but found none near the Bay of Quevenen.
Ah, big rip.
Yeah, big rip. He never got any more. Now this is where
So unfortunate.
Tolkien's linguist nature is apparent. Because the elves were discovered in groups of 12, 12 became the number they counted with ever after, and 144 was their biggest number for a long time. Also, in none of their later dialects did they ever have a common name for a greater number than 144. Now, back to the Valar. A particular Valar named Melkor discovered that the awakening had happened, which is actually a really interesting idea that these like angels or demigods had absolutely no idea what the major god was doing. And so on Middle Earth, which most of them had kind of abandoned for now Valinor, this awakening had happened, and Melkor had discovered it first. Melkor wasn't a fan of the elves and began to send evil spirits to attack them. But he was incredibly intelligent, so he sent them like hunters and horsemen, because he knew the other Valar that still traveled far in Middle-earth and would most likely be the first to spot the awakened elves was one called Orome. He knew that if he could make them afraid of the creatures used by the first Valar to discover them, they would be afraid and possibly start hostilities between them. There were rumors of elves who strayed too far away from the main tribe and were taken by riders as the
Okay, wait.
yeah.
I'm lost. I'm so confused.
Okay.
So, group of 12, they went to find more elves, didn't find any elves.
Yeah, and that was the end of their story.
Got it. Okay.
But,
I
so
was
now
still
we're-
like, wait, what?
Yeah, so now we're back at the just all elves together, or at least where
Got it,
they
got it,
had
got
all
it.
gone to settle. So each of them had kind of gone and settled they're all in their tribes. Now we're looking at what's going on in this at the same time. At the same time as they were discovering more elves and kind of living life, one of these angels found them. This angel hated them, despised them, and so he decided to attack them, but he did it in such a way that when one of the other angels, who was a good angel, when he inevitably did find them, they would be afraid of him because he was the angel of the hunt and kind of hunting and gathering and whatnot. So he made all of the creatures attacking the elves look like this good angel, Orome's, like people that worked for him.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of brewing this distrust and hatred of the angels before they even actually interacted with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Now, Melkor's malicious trick was clear. Sorry,
Quickly.
it wasn't quickly. It was supposed to be clearly. That was my issue.
Oh.
Melkor's
Quickly,
malicious
quickly.
trick was clearly working, and Orome eventually did find the elves, and he recognized what they were. They were creations of Eru Elvitar. The elves were very suspicious of him at first, believing he was the writer who captured all those elves that they had now these like fairy tale stories in their culture of these writers who took people away. And so they're like, oh, that's him, that he's the writer.
Yeah. I mean, I would be suspicious too.
Yeah. However, 3 lords of the elves were still open to Orome and went with him to Valinor. These 3 lords returned and told the elves of the glory of Valinor, causing the next stage of the elves, called the Sundering of the Elves.
That doesn't sound very good.
The Sundering of the Elves happened when they were told of Valinor, and many of them were convinced and headed there with Orome. Now, because I'm skipping and summarizing, I won't really say which tribes because it wouldn't make sense. I didn't really explain a lot about the tribes of the elves. So just saying, oh, this tribe and this tribe and this tribe went with him would mean nothing to you. But many of the elves left on what they called the Great Journey. These elves later became known as Eldar, meaning starfolk, and they were named such by Orome. The remaining elves that decided to stay on Middle-earth were Tatvar and Lindar elves. They stayed for a few reasons, but simply put, they were still suspicious of Orome, and some were attached to their land and the lives that they had built.
Boy, big mistake.
Not really. I mean, they're still doing just fine. They eventually spread out through Middle-earth. These elves were called Avari, or meaning the unwilling. Now, before we kind of go into our home brewing, I did want to discuss the thing that I mentioned earlier. Ugh. Wow,
Wow, you are.
I have tripped up on my
wrecked.
tongue like 3 times so far.
Quickly, warrior. I mean, we're all over the map.
Now, for all of you listening, we're recording on a different day than we normally do, and so I guess I'm just not in it. I'm not on my game. I don't know.
Just you gotta step up your game, man. Maybe It's because I didn't do the lukewarm open. You know, we
You
just didn't
screwed
have
us
that
all up,
time
Aaron. It's all
to
your fault. You're
just.
right.
I
I
didn't
agree.
even have that time to just, Benedict Cumberbatch. You know, we just
Yeah,
didn't have
to
that.
prepare our mouths to say words. Hey, your bird hadn't spoken yet. That was...
Oh, she has, but I have an awesome mute button.
Oh, nice. Now, before we go into our home brewing, I want to discuss a bit more about Melkor and what I told you earlier. Melkor wanted to create his own life, but being that he was only a Valar and not
Did you say wife or life?
life, he wanted to create his own life.
Okay, got it.
But despite him being a Valar, he did not have the power to create life.
So
Melkor,
instead,
as we talked about earlier, also despised the elves because they were creations like he wanted to make, but he couldn't. When he was hurting them, like the story said, some elves were kidnapped because Melkor realized if he couldn't make life himself, he could corrupt life that was created into new beings that he could call his own. He did this through torture and other foul craft, turning these elves into the first orcs in mockery of the elves. And that's
Oh,
how we get the
cool.
Uruk-hai as well in Tolkien.
Oh. I knew they were like demented elves, but I didn't know how that actually happened.
Yeah, and so this guy despised elves, and so they were like the first elves that were taken and turned into orcs, and that was
So do you know? Do you know if orcs are like spawned in spawning pits now? Is that like still a thing?
I'm not
Like it is in the
exactly sure.
movies?
Normal. It says here that that's how they can. In my research, it said that they were made are through torture and other foul crafts. So I'm not sure exactly what those other foul crafts could be.
When I was a kid, I had a headcanon for some reason that orcs were created by killing elves and humans and then throwing them in spawning pits and then rebirthing them.
Maybe that's what we do in our world.
I mean, it's a super cool idea. It's a terrifying idea, though, because the more they kill of you, the more they get.
That's why they become a good like enemy. Like
Yeah, it's
the
a terrifying
war,
concept.
losing the war to them.
If you
means
lose a
they're
battle,
getting-
they get more. Yeah, like they get even more than just winning a small battle and killing your numbers.
Yeah. So, but now we should go into how the elves were created on our world. Do you have any ideas
All
for
right.
this?
Well, I think the first thing we need to start off with, because our world is like super all over the place, like we're just kind of everywhere,
Yeah.
which is understandable because we're building this kind of like different topics all at the time.
Yeah.
I think we need to discuss, do people live in like racial groups or like more cultural nation like groups? Like, do elves all live together and orcs all live together and, gnomes all live together in a different nation and, humans live together in a different nation? Or is it like elves are living together with humans and everything?
Yeah, in my worlds, I never like to have it that way. I always like to have it be just kind of like the culture of an area. So the nations have their kind
Yeah,
of
that's usually what I do,
cultural
too.
identity.
Yeah,
And
I
so-
usually do. Yeah, the culture influences more than the race. So, like, you can have tieflings, humans, elves, and dwarves living in the same nation, and they have the same culture.
Yeah.
That's how I
But
normally do it.
I do like to have a little bit of like a cultural identity at the same time as there is also the main culture of the area they're in. So like they might be living in like let's say Spain, but they are culturally American, so they still have like that kind of American ideals built into the background of who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Even
know
though
what you're-
they are more Spanish because they've lived there most of their life. But
Yeah. I mean, I like that, but I usually do mostly culture based, and then like if somebody, no matter their race, from a different culture moves to that culture, they're different, even though they could be the same race as somebody else. It's usually how I do it.
Well, let's begin on, I guess, do we
So
want
what
to
do we
do
wanna
a
do? Do we
culture
wanna do something
of a
different?
nation then?
Do we want to? Yeah. Do we want? So you're gonna have to remind me again.
Well, so I was just going to do
How-
elven history, so how elves were created. It doesn't have to really be
Right.
culture.
Right. Well, right. But so are we gonna have like the races created like apart from culture then? Like apart from like are all the elves created as a single entity first? I mean, not all million elves that exist, but like are they all just created as a different? Do you get what I'm trying to say? I don't even know what I'm
Yeah,
trying
you're
to say.
saying like what's the origin story of races? Is it like Adam and Eve where there's two of that race and then and that was
Right.
all it was
Right.
at the beginning, or is it like there's 100, or what's the deal there?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, did they create elves as a single culture and then elves dissipated into different cultures? Did they like? That's what we need to discuss.
Yeah. I think
I kind of like the idea. I kind of like the idea of each race was created like individually first as an individual culture, and then over time they've just dispersed throughout the world, and now these like nation-like cultures exist. But like old ancient empires existed of only elves,
uh-huh.
so you could like find remnants of like an ancient elven civilization in a random nation that has all of the races combined.
Yeah. Yeah, that works. And so, how many do you think were created originally? Like, what was the starting number? 32?
Well, I think we should. Before we get into numbers, I think we should. What was the purpose for them to be created? Why were they created? And who created them?
So, I kind of want humans to be the first thing created, because I think like at least like thinking of how they're statted in D&D, they're a middle ground, and so I kind of want them to be like they were created first, and I think second is the elves because they wanted to create a thing of beauty.
Ooh, rest in peace, humans. Ugh, bunch of ugly sacks of flesh.
I mean, come on.
True.
Have you seen us? Let's be honest.
You right. You right. You right. Oh man.
Rip us, am I
Okay,
right?
yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with that though. I'm totally okay with having humans be created first.
But I mean,
So,
that is kind of
okay.
cliche. Like, but I think
Well,
elves being
I
a
think
sign
the
of beauty is like almost like a cultural understanding. Like, there's a cultural
Yeah.
touchstone there of elves have just kind of become associated with beauty and grace.
Yeah, I actually think the bigger cliche is actually humans are created last and they like take over. Like they are like this group that breeds like rabbits and takes over the angelic culture of the elves. I think that's more of like a common trope than
Yeah,
having
I guess
humans
that
be
is.
created
Yeah,
first.
taking over the elves. The elves were first, and then came the humans.
Right, we're sophisticated and have all this cool lore, and then the barbaric, ugly sacks of flesh came and bred like rabbits and took over everything.
Yeah, that is. You're right. That is a well-known trope.
So yeah, I guess humans were created first. Do we want to get into the reason why humans were created first, or we just want to go straight to
No,
elves?
I think they were just kind of a base race that was made. I think we can go into human lore another week.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so then elves were created. So here's a question then.
Yes.
In our world, do the like not the two creation fish beings that we have, they don't create races, but they created like lesser gods, and those gods created races?
Hey, yeah. See, that's yeah. So much of of creation is based around each other, and we don't have a lot of that created yet. So that is,
Yeah, I think let's just say that the two creation beings created like lesser gods, and those are the gods that people would worship on the material plane, essentially. And those
what I was
gods
gonna say
created.
is that my idea for that would be it was those two gods, and their plan was just to have them. That was it. They were the top. No one else was gonna be able to even like get up to their power. They fought, got destroyed. Their emotions created the other planes. Their bodies created the material plane, and then the corruption. And then I think that there are parts of the world that just had like pockets of just immense magic that almost took on a form, a sentience. They gained a sentience, and so parts where there was just whatever it is, like whether it's
Yeah,
the
just like
forest,
crazy magical energy, or
yeah, and it just kind of became
spawned a greater deity of some kind.
yeah,
Like some sort
and
of
so
deity.
there's like the one of the water, and he kind of formed in the deepest parts of the ocean as magic coalesced there into a being, and the one of the
He
forest
created
was
the Tritons, like that kind of
exactly,
thing.
exactly. But
Yeah.
but yeah, and so I think in that way, I think those pockets of magic are a mixture of both the creation deities' energies, and so it in a way they created them, but it was not purposeful.
Okay, so then what magical energy coalescence that turned into a god created the elves?
I would say that
Do we want to do tropey and say forest?
I felt forest, but okay, no, actually, let's go Water.
Water.
Yes. So
Why
the god of
water?
water, because it's weird, it's unique, and then I want the ones who created like tritons and beings of the water to be possibly like the god of the forest, and so maybe there was like a oh
The
wow
only
okay
way.
maybe elves in this world are industrial, and so what they like this god of the ocean created elves to destroy the trope of elves that kind of keep the forest sacred. They're like the ones creating civilization and cutting down the forest and creating giant cities of just grandiose like a beauty. And so it was kind of an attack almost on it. And in the same way, the god of the forest created tritons and things like that to live and use the water.
Yeah. The only okay. The only way I see this working, kind of branching off what you're talking about, is that the god of the water, and this is just gonna go to straight to like conquest, but everything's about conquest. But like the god of the water created elves to take over the land, and the god of the forest created tritons to take over the water. That's the only thing I could think of that would like
Yeah, that's
possibly
kind of
make
what I
that
was
work.
saying. But
Yeah,
I was
right.
kind of seeing it more as specifically destroying the forest because I think the water cycle and all that the plant the forest actually is absorbing the water, and so it could be like they have to be cut. They need to be kept in check. And so maybe it wasn't even like a malicious like attack. It was more of like how they kind of have like there's delicate ecosystems that are kept in check by this deer eats this brush by the side of the water, keeping the erosion down, and then like all they everything is playing on each other, and so when something gets out of balance, that is when a god creates a being that then joins that economy, the ecology, and it becomes a part of it, keeping it in balance again.
Okay, what if we just abandon the concept of forest god, water god, and they're just magical beings that formed, and when things become out of balance, they start creating their own races to put things back in balance.
Yeah, that works.
Because then we kind of get it, because if we're looking at D&D in particular, like we have to like take into account that tritons are like, water beings and like, breathe, can breathe in water and stuff like that and have swim speeds. And I think if we like abandon the concept that these gods have like, because we have the titans already that kind of resemble elements and resemble,
Yeah.
like elements and material of the material plane. So I think it'd be fun if these gods are just like, not nebulous. They have, personalities and things like that, but they don't resemble like the forest or the oceans, but instead, they resemble like life, death, chaos, order, like these things that are like
Yeah, more
nebulous human concepts.
yeah,
Right?
metaphysical than actual
Metaphysical
physical.
concepts. And
Yeah.
when one starts overpowering, they create a counter race essentially
Yeah.
to balance it out.
Yeah, that's really
So-
cool. And so one of the things we did create in
And
an early
the
episode,
reason why the first and then you could do, not to interrupt, sorry, you can then do humans were the ultimate balanced race because that's what they are in D&D. That's why they
Yes.
were created first.
yes, yeah, that's really cool. And that was kind of a collaboration with all of the deities.
Right. And then something got out of balance of some sort.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that would be. But then if the elves were created to rebalance something,
I mean, I like the
There
idea
have
of
to be-
having our elves be more industrial. And so in the way of that they kind of have grown, so instead of being creators for it, but they kind of grew into these beings that sought and were beautiful, they tried to create
Maybe-
cities
maybe-
that matched their beauty. And so that was kind
Or
of the
like-
intention, that they would cut down and use the forest, keeping everything in balance once more.
yeah, I the only thing I can think of that makes this work is like humans weren't building cities or grandiose cities.
Yeah, that's
they
what I kind
were-
of wanted it to be. Where humans were just like doing what they needed to do to survive, but
They were
elves
like
came and were like,
hunter-gatherers.
why are you happy with this? Like, we could create these amazing, immense cities that have aqueducts and these whole like maybe
Yeah,
they
like-
even gave them like advanced mechanical knowledge of like aqueducts and things and these inventions so that they would be inspired to create them and continue to grow, maybe where humans had kind of started to grow complacent with where they were at.
To me, it screams like a very New World Native American thing where humans are just like not it. I don't even know where I'm trying to go with this. Like humans were just living off the land, hunting and gathering, not creating this civilization, a balanced civilization, but instead giving way more to nature and not, the gods' ideal of living this balanced life. Instead, they gave too much into nature, so they created elves to then build these industrialized cities.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. So they were kind of, as you were saying, like Native American. They were let's be one with nature. Let's don't overuse it when you use stuff.
Yeah, like they originally created to be this balanced race, but they ended up slowly drifting away from the balance of civilization and going more towards like even more barbaric. Like that isn't necessarily synonymous with Native American, but like maybe more like barbaric and nature focused, and then
maybe
the
they were
gods created
nomadic,
the elves,
not wanting to really settle down and build, because what they wanted to do was
tribal.
they would use part of the land, hunt there, do whatever, and then they would move on. And they wanted to keep this nomadic.
Tribal.
Yeah, and elves they made them to be
to counteract and make a big civilization.
Yes, we will live here. We will create a kingdom. And they kind of eventually forced the humans to join them
like
because
a magically advanced, beautiful city. These beautiful, magically advanced cities, which you could probably still find like ruins of.
Yeah. Now, I do want to mention one thing that we did set up in an earlier episode about our world, to kind of keep the two beings needed for creation. We said there had to be a good and an evil deity to create life.
Yeah.
What good and what evil concepts created elves?
That's hard.
Now, okay, based on who we're our ideas of elves in this world, it seems like it would be destruction and creation, like the abstract concepts of destruction and creation.
I was thinking even more abstract than that.
Like
I was
what?
thinking more even along the lines of so the elves build and create huge cities.
Beauty and...
Well, no, I was thinking something more along the lines of like manifest destiny, and then like even one concept that's both good and evil, like something like manifest destiny. I mean, obviously you wouldn't use manifest destiny, but like
manifest destiny is a real rough one to go with.
No, well, right, but
we exist, we deserve it. Like,
right. No, but like not conquering, but control, like being able to like rule over. I'm trying to think of like a nebulous term that rings correct in what my mind is thinking.
I mean, I think control is a good one. And so would we be changing the idea that good and evil is required to create our things, or would we be saying that the idea of control maybe these gods are all twins, or all like they have a good and an evil side? They are good and evil.
What I'm thinking is the gods were created by both good and evil magical energies, and they like swirled together to create a god with both good and bad concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And then those gods used their both good and bad concepts to create life. But I also like the idea of two, like individuals, like one good, one bad, having to come together to create. I think I want two individuals more than I want one.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting too.
Yeah. So like pools of negative magical energy created a god, and pools of good magical energy created a god, and then those two gods came together to create elves. So then what would be bad and what would be good?
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking it was like beauty and control, or beauty and like rulership. I don't know. What's the bad one?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like there's so many descriptors that you could come up with.
I mean, I do like the idea of like kind of that they have a manifest destiny feel to them. Like they kind of, when they came to the world, they felt like, oh, I deserve it.
Right. It's
so maybe it's like beauty and desire.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was going to say lust, but lust is more like usually attributed to sexual desire.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't have to.
You can lust after everything. No,
yeah, lusting after gold or money or whatever is...
Yeah. So
still
like
lust.
So lust is the bad part, where they like lust after these beautiful structures and these grandiose cities.
Yeah,
And
they
then
lust after
beauty
these.
is the good part.
Yeah. Yeah, the lust in a way, the lust is also like good or bad. Like the lust is like
That
ambition.
also
It
fits
drives them forward while it
right.
also makes them want more than more than would make like
Could we do ambition and lust?
ambition and lust. Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's cool.
Because those are
Ambition and
like,
lust. They're
yeah,
like two
ambition
sides
and
of the same
lust.
coin.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. And then it fits really well with the high elf wood elf dynamic in D&D, because high elves are like, at least in traditional, I mean what the player's handbook says, they're like kind of arrogant, and then wood elves are like the opposite.
Don't forget about those lovely sea elves.
Yep, I don't know anything about them. So but I like that. I think that's really cool. And I like the dynamic. And so the
Now,
purpose for creating them, so the purpose for creating them was to balance the world. What was so imbalance? It was imbalanced because the humans were just kind of succumbing to nature, I guess, or maybe they lost their ambition and desire to create
they
these
didn't
beautiful
they didn't
like
have
cities
enough
and
ambition or
civilization.
lust to continue. Like they they were happy with where they were at, being nomads. They weren't settling down. They had no reason to settle down, which I in oh man, it's been a while since I had my world history class.
It's been a while.
The reason why societies settled down was because they started to have too much population to like support themselves by just traveling around. They needed to have a source of food that they could continue to have, like make sure to continually get enough food for everybody. And so I'm thinking there might be like a built-in, like, I'm thinking like there's a Mass Effect group called the Quarians, an alien race that has a kind of like a coming of age, the pilgrimage that they have to go on, where they have to go, the kid growing up into adult has to go prove themselves, become like a functioning member of society, then come back with something for the society that will help the society, whether it's a new technology or whatever. Like, and that's how you prove you're an adult. And so I think that they have something like that kind of allowed them to not need to settle down. They kept having like people leave for their pilgrimages or whatever, and they never hit that point where they were forced to settle down.
Yeah, I like the idea of them just like of humans just being like complacent, I guess, like
Yeah.
just okay with the way that they're living
Yeah.
in terms of like, and they just gave way to nature essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It gave way to ambition and lust both being like, this needs to change, and so they got together and created the elves. Now,
Okay, so my question that I have is, if there are two entities that create like one evil, one good, I think it'd be cool if we had two separate like goals and dreams for the elves that each of these entities had.
yeah.
So the good, whatever god that was good that created the elves in
Ambition.
this union, yeah, ambition wanted a race that would bring about civilization and bring about advancement in technology and
And I think they
magical
also wanted
prowess.
it to kind of kick the humans into gear, like to show the humans what could be accomplished with ambition, to give the humans an ambition.
Right. And then what did Lust want?
Lust wanted
A group of individuals who would pursue their deepest desires no matter the consequences or costs.
yes, and followers that would continue to lust in the way that would give it power, in the way it was lusting for power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And then you ended up with this amalgamation.
I think what happened is that both of them had successes in this. I think the drow are the creatures that succumb to their lust to the point of being kicked from the elven society, traditional elven society, being shunned into the Underdark because of their falling into that. And Eladrin are the ones who reached a copacetic, like a perfect balance of ambition, and the Eladrin have got an ambition to a level that allows them to also be in tune with nature and without overusing it. And so it's this level of ambition to shoot for that they had, that the Eladrin got, while the Drow went after the lust.
Yeah. Do we want it to be that like black and white, no pun intended? Do we want it to be like that Drow versus Eladrin, or do we want to do like more of a mix?
So I mean, this is race stuff. This is not in a race. Not everybody's the same. So I don't think everybody's lusting in the Drow or whatnot. But this is just kind of a major thing, is that they got kicked out of Elven society and they went into the Underdark. And the Eladrin, they kind of escaped out of the needs of society and got into the Feywild.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I still love the idea of like a Drow society that's like based off, like super heavily off of lust of all different types. I think that's a really cool concept, actually.
Yeah.
In the Underdark.
Yeah, and so
I think it's a cool concept, though.
Normally, they followed Lolth in the actual story. They followed the goddess Lolth down the path of evil, and they had built their societies in the Underdark. And so now it will be they followed lust into the Underdark, where they have grown a society that continues to want more and more until eventually they will come up from the grounds to take the surface as they believe they rightfully should.
So then, what did this like do to humans? How did Elven?
Well, so I think elves grew kingdoms.
Humans?
They created kingdoms. They created cities. They created nations. They created all these different things that then the area that the humans had to travel to be nomadic in shrunk and shrunk and shrunk until the point where they had to become a stable society, because the world just wasn't cohesive to their lifestyle anymore.
Okay, here's my next idea.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be really hard for world creation. It might be too difficult for world creation, actually. So what
Challenge
if...
accepted, my friend.
Yeah, well, it would actually require probably a lot of work, but
yeah.
What if with each reaction to a different race being created, the gods created a different race based off of how humans responded, because they're the balance?
Oh, that's kind of how I thought it would go.
Yeah, the problem is that's a lot of, because like you'd have to be able to like fit and worm them into creating every single race in D&D.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I also think like as I was saying, like with Melkor, I think there are outliers where somebody did something to create another race.
Or
but
you
I think
could do
the majority
chunks. You could do groups. Like Yuan-Ti and lizard folk were together, like
I think also there could be like a human, like some sort of great wizard or lich that did some sort of terrifying experiment that then created life, or like there are other things that could happen to create life, but I think the majority of them will fall under this. These races were created to keep balance. However, the balance became unbalanced. These were created, and so I think
I'm assuming that
we could create
orcs. Very unbalanced right now.
Yeah, and so I think what would happen next would be they created orcs to keep the lust and ambition of the elves down. As they expanded and expanded, they found these orc tribes were there to fight them back, keeping them at bay.
Yeah, like humans didn't fight back, and we're just getting like...
Yeah, they just were like, oh, we'll just move because we're nomadic. We'll keep moving if you're okay with
getting
it.
Like gentrified, essentially.
Yeah, and so then the orcs were created to be like, no, this is ours. What do you mean you want to take it? No.
Yeah, and then a huge war between orcs and elves. And
yes,
then
and so now
they're
there's
so bad and so bloody they made like
there's the 100 Years War of the orcs and the elves.
Classic fantasy. But yeah, you see the difficulty though. Eventually, you start building and building, and like it gets really hard to start fitting races.
Well, yeah, but
into
I think
different spots.
I think that's true whenever you try to create like this type of like how are they all actually created? I think that happens no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, with this type of dynamic, absolutely. Like in my world, it was just super easy. Like they just all created different races based off of their looks.
Yeah.
And fought over the material plane. So there was not like, I mean, there's reason behind it, but this you start getting into like a never-ending spiral of like, okay, we're like this is what happened after that, and now we have to find another way to fit another race in, and then this is what happened after that to fit another race.
And so I mean, if we could just go through it,
you have to skirt the issue of war and peace over and over again.
Yeah, but I mean, it already then it in a way it also kickstarts the history. Like you kind of already know these huge historical moments because you created them during when you were thinking of how the races
Well, I
were
mean,
created.
that's even another thing you could do.
Like the next thing I would do, so like if we just go down the line, I would go from where we're at to the orcs were created to kind of toe the line and be like, stop this. The Dragonborn were created as mediators, strong enough to fight either side, but also charismatic enough to bring them to the table together.
Yeah, and then after that, I would probably say some sort of race that is seeking knowledge to like document
Gnomes.
all of this.
Gnomes are
Yeah,
created
like
to
gnomes to document and
categorize the
scribe.
world.
Yep. Yeah.
The dwarves are created
But then-
to create to. Oh, okay. So
Build
then
the-
so then the elves were still creating with the wood and creating with and so dwarves came to show them another way and bring about the Age of Stone. Halflings came in where? That's the question. I think halflings are next.
I mean, just
but
to
I'm
be
not sure
awesome, really. I mean, just to be
Halflings
awesome,
came next
really.
to show them the awesomeness.
The awesomeness. Yeah. No, exactly.
They
Yep.
joined. They showed them the awesomeness of partying.
Yep.
They party on, dudes.
They had to tip the scales to add more short races because it was too tall. 3 short races: dwarves, gnomes, halflings. 3 tall races: orcs, elves, and dragonborn. You know.
But actually though, like, what do you? Okay, so like,
I mean, in D&D, they're most known for luck, but
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was trying to think of some way that luck could be important, but I think
honestly, they'd probably be like last. They'd probably be like last to be created.
yeah, I was kind of thinking their last major race. I think
throw in,
tieflings
like, a
came
balance of
about in hell.
Uncertainty.
So, oh, I like that. At the very end, halflings were created in the uncertainty of what unbalance was coming next.
Yep. Yeah. And that's their luck aspect. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like literally a never-ending giant slide. You know, like a giant water spiral slide.
Yeah,
Just
and I think
continuously going down.
it can be done
it's super
pretty
cool.
easily if you designate like I think these are the major races in my world, and like have
Yeah, I mean,
everything
the
else
first, like-
be like
Yeah, the first like 5 or 6 get really are easy, but once you start getting into like 10, 15 races, like it starts getting really tight.
yeah.
But I
think as long as you
absolutely
set
agree
out
with
like
that.
these are the races that I want to be the major races in my world, and you set that out early enough, then you can you just do that for those that you created, and then the other ones you just think like tieflings. I would just have them be a race of hell. Like they are literally just people from hell that have mated with people of the material plane, and so those people, like, we already created how those people were made. They just had sex with demons. That's fine. That's them out of the way. And so like as long as you can like think about like maybe some god breathed sentience into birds of the air, creating the Aarakocra. And like you could just, as long as like I don't think it's that hard. Like you're saying that it feels like you run into a corner. I don't think you have to.
I do, because I think you start overlapping a lot.
But I mean,
Now, if you only like, and I'm saying this if you did this for every race, but if you only stuck to like 8 major races, like 8 major ancient races, then you could do it no problem, and then just start like the balance became unbalanced, and then races were just started creating everywhere. Then you could do that. But if you wanted to like have this same theme throughout all the races of D&D, I think you'd get into a really tight spiral.
But I
But I think I actually like the idea more of having like 8 major races that were the balance, and then things became unbalanced, and then other races just started like a top slowly not being able to spin anymore. Just races just started getting flung all over.
Or maybe it was like there was some sort of war in the heavens or something, and so that they were distracted with that, and while they were, other things began to populate the world, like patrons of warlocks began to populate the world, and like other beings of immense power.
Yeah, I mean, once you get off of the balance, like once you get off of the slide, you're really good. Like you can go anywhere with it. It's just you have to find those like 10. You'd probably do, like you said, elves, dwarves, orcs are probably a good one. Gnomes are probably a good one. Yeah, I even like the idea of halflings being the end of the balance because of their luck. They're based off of luck.
Yeah,
And
I
it
like
screwed
the
everything
elves,
up.
humans, orcs to dragonborn to gnomes to dwarves, then to halflings. I like that. I like that progression.
Yeah. And that just the balance ended with uncertainty and luck.
Yeah, that's we had 7 major races there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. But yeah, I just think if you were to try to do that with like, I don't know how many races there are in D&D. There's a lot now. I think it would get really real tight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could, like I said, you still could do it. It would just take a lot of like, you'd have to really sit and think about it for a while. Like in my world, I just literally have like all the beast type races were created together. And then, like all these type of races were created together. And all these type of races were created together, like in big groups for essentially the sole purpose of war. So
interesting. So as of right now, I think there are 40 official races, and I'm not including half races or 2 versions of orcs, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a lot to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That'd take a long time. I mean, you
could also cut out all of Eberron, and like there are weird races thrown in there. Grung was counted and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, you could do it. It would just be a whole lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I like the idea of like 8 to 10 major races that are part of this balance, and then things just got unbalanced because after that, and then you still have to follow the good and evil aspects of creation, but it's no longer in this balance. They tried so hard to balance everything all the time that they made it unbalanced.
Yeah.
And now the material plane is lawful, chaotic, and then also neutral, like it's just all over. And then that could be where like alignments came from too, like there was tried so hard to be balanced that chaos emerged and lawfulness, I guess, emerged. Like you could do you could really expand a lot on the topic of balance and then imbalance.
Yeah, returning the world to balance is like one of the major themes of that campaign.
Yeah, I think it'd be super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, it would be very like tropey and very fantasy RPG-esque, but I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely not. No, and I think it's a great idea. I think it's an awesome idea.
So I'm not sure where to go from here.
Well, I mean, my question is, I know we talked about like humans just getting conquered. Like, did they just get conquered? Did they just how did
I don't see them as ever getting conquered. And which way did you think they were conquered?
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, if the elves just expanded and made great civilization, the humans would just kind of let it happen. Like, how does that work?
So I didn't see it as them being conquered. I see it as them, like, they're nomadic. So as these people built settlements, they were like, oh, we'll just go to this other place. We'll just be nomadic over here. And like, as they kind of traveled their route, as they kind of had a route that they would go, oh, in summer we were here, in spring we're there, and that kind of thing. As they would travel that, and they would find there was a city where they were planning to go, they would just say, oh, we're just not going to go there. Eventually, borders happened. And so they're like, hey, this is the border of our nation. Like, we're not sure if we really want your whole nation, your whole nomadic nation coming in here. And so it just got smaller to the point where they were like, okay, I think we have to, like, we're not having enough room to travel away for winter or summer or whatever. So we just have to figure out how to live here. And then they kind of created a kingdom to kind of keep up when they were like, oh, we don't have enough wood or whatever. So then they had to figure out how to trade with the people next to them. And then it all kind of grew and grew and grew into a whole thing.
Here's my other question. Like, are humans the, like, constant balance? Like, are humans the constant, like, neutral throughout this whole creation process? Or are they just continuously skewed toward nature the entire time? Like, skewed towards, like, yeah,
I don't
nature,
think their culture changed during the creation. Like, I think during, with each creation of the different nations, they kind of remained as they were.
Like, I also kind of like the idea.
Do you see them as being, like, constantly changing their culture? Like, all of a sudden they were kind of more into nature and nomadic and live off the land and not take too much. And then you see them as changing that?
Well, see, I like the idea that they were created for balance. Like, they were the balanced race, but they always caused the imbalance. So, like, you created orcs to combat the elves, but the humans joined with the orcs and started beating and dominating the elves. And
so
so then
then
you had to create the
Dragonborn were created
Dragonborn, but then
too.
the humans joined the Dragonborn, and like things got out of control there. Like
Yeah,
humans are just
and
this
so
always the tipping stone because
yeah,
they're
interesting,
just constantly
interesting.
inbound. They're just constantly balanced that they don't have an actual purpose, I guess. Which I guess the humans didn't have a purpose, so they created elves for ambition and lust.
Yeah, so I think originally it was like they didn't want to create a creature with a purpose. Like the purpose of the creature was just to join this ecological system. And
Right.
when they did,
It
they
imbalanced.
began to aid it in a way that it became excessive. It began to grow too
Right.
much in a way
Right.
that they were
And
supposed to partially use it. And so then that kind of spawned the need for the elves. And then the
right.
elves, I like that idea.
And so the
Then
humans
they
just
joined the elves.
constantly
Then
are
too much was
right.
growing. Then they
Right.
created the orcs to battle them. Then
And
they joined the orcs to
right.
defend.
And
And
then
that
at
got
the
out of
end,
hand.
if we do halflings or the end, they joined uncertainty and chaos ensued. And that's how it broke the spiral of trying to be balanced.
Yeah,
It
that's that.
broke it beyond fixing essentially.
Yeah, and you'll love that because halflings are important now in the world.
Yes. Praise be. You can tell it's an Aaron creation when halflings are important in the world.
And I like
No, I
that
like that a lot.
that didn't just happen like it wasn't forced. It didn't feel like we were like, oh, we got to make the halflings important. It just kind of happened as we're like going through the races. We're like, huh, I guess the halflings are like something about their luck, or oh, they could be like the final one in the uncertain. Like that just felt natural the way it came about.
No, yeah. Yeah. And I love the idea of the humans like tipping the scale everywhere they go because they don't have a purpose, so they just continuously join the next purpose that forms.
Yeah, that's really cool. But
And
I
then
think
it spiraled, and then I love the idea of this is where I was going earlier, that the gods almost like a, I guess again to go back to like, a biblical story, like I guess it'd be a fun idea if the gods just like shattered it all and scattered them everywhere, and that's how you started getting nations of all sorts of different races.
yeah, in the end, with all the other races that were created, they whatever, like they had like a god war, and that was when they were distracted, and the other magical beings created creations.
Yeah, and the
At
only
that
way to
point
fix
was
the
when they were done there, they saw the catastrophe, as they would call it, that it was the Earth at that point, and they scrambled it like the Christian story of the Tower of Babel. Like they made it so that there were. Maybe they even did. Could they have done that exact thing where they're like, we're going to switch up which languages to create a balance between the nations so that the nations will now be related to these languages, not to who you are racially.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. I think that would work really well. They just destroyed it and separated
They created
them
their
all
own
with their own
boundaries, their
different.
own their own kingdoms by forcing them to know different languages. And with that,
Yep.
I think that's all we need for this episode. I think that's good. I think that was good.
I think so too. Yeah.
That was interesting. I really like what that is.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah. It's super awesome.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Dungeoneered. We are still looking for questions or anything. Feel free to shoot us a email at dungeoneered@gmail.com. I think that's really it. You have anything else to add, Aaron? Anything you want to say?
No, I think
Okay.
we're pretty good.
Well,
I guess the only thing I could ever say is just like be on the lookout for some fun surprises, maybe,
and
I'm just going to have to say something about a surprise every week until
just
the surprise
until
happens.
it is revealed. Thank you all for listening, and remember to be the sharpest barrel in the bunch. See you next time.
Bye?
There you go.